This is John Cameron with Gray Area, where our mission is to connect house music fans across the globe. And today I'm speaking with Deeper Purpose. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Yourself?
I'm good, thank you. I guess it's evening over there. I'm in Denver, but it's evening over there.
Yeah, it's like early evening. It's like 5 p.m. like UK time. So it's getting almost the evening. But yeah,
I see.
most of the day's done.
And I mean, you've made your rounds in the US festival circuit like a lot recently, though. Like just this year, you played Ubby Dubby, Cross, EDC, and that's just a few of them. How have stateside dance music fans received your music?
Um, Honestly, I mean, obviously I'm from overseas, so coming over, I sort of knew I had a following in the States, but I didn't realize to what extent people were going to like receive me and take me as a UK artist, and I've just been blown away by it all. I mean, all the expectations I had of the US crowd and what I was expecting coming in have just been blown completely out of the water. I mean, I've been received so amazingly by everyone in the US that I can't. I still struggle, so I have to pinch myself some days that everything's gone so well so far. I mean, yeah, we came in, played a lot of big shows, and like, yeah, the reception on all of them has been amazing. From
That's
all the
good.
fans,
So
reception and I've gained so much more so many more fans as well, like, along the way so far. So yeah, it's amazing.
that's great. So generally just like really well received, like they're really positive about it and everything.
Yeah, literally, there's not been one bad thing said. I know I haven't got a bad word to say about any of the shows that I've played. Everything's just been amazing and sort of a surreal moment, to be honest. Coming from a other side of the world to come across and play these sort of shows and have the reception of the crowd and be like, I feel like I belong. I feel like I belonged there. If that makes sense. Like I've sort of come in, my sound's been received really well. Like me as a person, like yeah, everything's just gone more than I could have ever hoped for.
That's good to hear. And it's kind of been a long road up to this point. Like a lot of stuff that went into this. It's what didn't happen overnight by any means. Take me back
Yeah.
all the way to the beginning. Like your first experiences with music as a kid and stuff like that. What was that?
So I was always interested in music as a kid. I mean, I used to love like hip hop, like Eminem, 50 Cent. I grew up sort of listening to them sort of things, and then I never really sort of saw a career in music. To be honest, I was always into music. I dabbled in a little bits and pieces, but I was actually fully set to be a farmer. Believe it
A
or not,
farmer.
yeah, I was going to be a farmer. I was working on a farm with my granddad and stuff like that. And then randomly one night when I was like 17, like some local lads, some guys from the area, they were going out on a night out to the local town. To a nightclub, and I was only 17, and I was underage, and I borrowed one of their IDs and went to the club, and then I spent the whole night stood next to the DJ booth just watching the DJ. And I sort of, after an hour or two, I think I weirded him out a little bit because he come over, he's like, "You're right there," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm just like watching what you're doing. I'm so interested in it." And we became friends, and I went down every single week after that, and he taught me how to DJ. And then sort of farming went out the window. I was like, "Sorry, granddad, but I'm not going to work on the farm anymore." And
And
then
this is
that's
in
then I
Croydon. This is in Croydon.
yeah, yes, in Croydon. So it's a local nightclub called Tiger, and that was sort of playing open format stuff. So it was across the board from like R&B, hip hop, garage, dubstep, drum and bass, and yeah, so that's where I learned how to play in the clubs basically every week. And then after about a year of going down, the Bryn Two resident they were going to fire him, so the club turned around to me and was like, "Look, do you want a gig?" So they gave me a slot in the club, playing like a 6 hour slot from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. when it closed, and yeah, open format the whole night. And that was sort of how I got into DJing and into music. I mean, there was always sort of love for it there, but that was sort of like that one night borrowing that guy's ID and going to the club was what sort of like changed and sort of
I
embedded in
see.
me that I actually could be a DJ.
Are you at liberty to say what DJ that was? I'm just curious.
I'm not even sure who it was anymore. I mean, he wasn't even a big DJ. I think his name was just Stephen Boys or something like that. I mean, we haven't spoken a long time, and I mean that was well over like 13 years ago now. But yeah, we're not in touch anymore. I mean, we sort of fell out of touch like probably after about a year of like meeting. But yeah.
I see. And that was just open format. So when did you start kind of segueing more into dance music?
Mm, so that would have been around 2013.
Okay.
Was it 2013? Yeah, it was around 2013 when sort of like the Hot Natured guys started, like it's like Jamie Jones and Lee Foss made Hot Natured. I believe it was around then. They were putting out tracks like Benediction and Forward Motion, and that was what sort of really caught my ear, like Julia Bashmore, That's what really got me into that house music. I was like, oh, this is interesting. Because obviously I was playing like more like dance, like open, like more like clubby house music. But then obviously I discovered a different side to it. It's more like the deep house side of things, and
Yeah.
that's what caught my ear. And then I started going I started going out raving, and yeah, I sort of like started to like transition over, listening to more of it. And then one night in a club in London, funny enough, Egg London, we was me and my two friends. We finished one of my gigs at 3 a.m. Playing like open format stuff. We went to Egg London. We used to be able to get there by 4 a.m. The club used to run all the way through to like 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So yeah, it's like open like 12 hours. Got there at 4 a.m. and we was obviously at partying, like hanging out. And then I got grabbed by a member of security and taken upstairs into the office and searched because they thought I had narcotics on me, and they thought they saw me handing something to one of my friends, but in fact I actually wasn't. I had disposable earplugs in a bag because we were DJs, we were protecting our ears. I gave them a bag of earplugs, and they saw us on the camera that. And then they searched us. They found nothing because I didn't actually have anything on me other than these bags of earplugs. And they were like, "Oh, what was you doing on the camera? What was you doing?" I was like, "I was handing them earplugs." And then the manager stood there and they're like, "Look, we're so sorry. Like, I've ruined your night. How can I repay you?" And I was like, "Well, you can give me a set." And
Nice.
then,
So that was how the Egg London residency started, because you held that
yeah,
residency for what, 6 years, 7 years?
yeah, about 6, 7 years. I mean, yeah, that's how it started. I mean, he gave me a set in one of the rooms upstairs. It was an unpaid gig. It was like in the third room. He gave me a good set slot time. To be fair, he gave me like I think it's like 2 a.m. till 4 a.m. And when I got on, there was like no one in the room. And by the end of my set, the room was packed. And then afterwards, he was like, "Look, you done really well tonight. Let's speak about doing some future stuff." And then I then from there started hosting the room. So I'd get to program the whole room the whole night to myself, pick my own DJs, and we had to sell tickets. So I was like selling tickets for like for about 2 years, building my way like through the club. I ended up then getting to host room two, and then obviously the bigger room of like 500-600 people. And then from then on, I then got asked to then be like the main support act for a lot of the big nights there. Like obviously had like a support on like Lee Foss's nights there and become a resident. And so yeah, that's what sort of built my way into the house music scene. And after a few years, I gave up the open format stuff.
I see. And so it sounds like Egg London was really the residency where you sort of got your chops, like, because
Yeah,
obviously there's an art to playing direct support. You know, there's you play different rooms, and then there's just the repetition of doing it over and over and over again and figuring out how to read a crowd. Would you say that's like kind of where you really started honing your
yeah.
craft as a DJ?
Well, I feel like I've done the open format scene for so long that obviously you have to have like you have the same crowd in front of you for a 6 hour time period, and obviously you have to keep that same crowd entertained. They're not there for one specific music type or genre, so you have to know when to switch it up, read the crowd, and then direct. Obviously, your music has to reflect obviously what the mood of the room is. So I feel like I learned a hell of a lot of my craft doing that to keep that same crowd interested throughout the whole night. And that I feel like that's the big part of being a good DJ. It's not just your track selection, you're mixing it is the track selection and reading the crowd. um
Absolutely.
but mixing two tracks together, I mean, anyone could be taught to do that, but when it comes to having a vast array of music in front of you and you've got this crowd, you need to keep them entertained. That's when you need to know your craft to be a DJ. And it's like keeping the crowd interested, reading the vibe, or maybe they're not into that sort of like tech house, or they're not into that sort of vibe, and you need to switch it up and be like versatile. That's, I feel like, yeah, being an open format is where I sort of learned my trade as a DJ, but then applying that in house music and having to play like warm-up slots, closing slots, that it came quite naturally in that sense of like I was always knew my music collection. I had a vast like house selection by that stage. So yeah, I sort of managed to apply what I'd learned in the open format world into the house world. And yeah, so like do the warm-up slots, play like direct support slots. And yeah, that all sort of happened very like, yeah, organically, and yeah, it all just sort of came together. And
Absolutely.
that's where I like
Sorry, go on.
yeah, sorry, and that's where I like sort of managed to like polish off and like, yeah, and say like finesse what I'd already learned along the way.
And what you're saying resonates a lot, because I talk to techno DJs who also are like wedding DJs, and a lot of their
Yeah.
techno DJ friends will sort of joke about it and stuff like that. But really, when
Mm.
you're a techno DJ, you just get to play you all the time, you know. But
Yeah.
when you're doing open format, it's a lot more challenging. You have to really be on top of. You have to be like, reading the Billboard Hot 100 and stuff like that, just
Of
to know
course.
what normal people are listening to, you know.
Of
So you
course.
found like
Of
that
course.
probably do you feel like that gave you a leg up before you became more like specifically a house music DJ?
I think it did. Yeah. I've even still now. I mean, I still listen to all types of music. I'm still like very in touch with everything. I mean, I feel like it's very. You should. I mean, obviously, everyone's like it's subjective, but I feel like you should never like broaden or like close yourself in on one genre completely. I mean, even for like production and stuff like that, you can just draw so much influence from so much music. And I mean, especially say like my earlier days with all that definitely played a part in the music and the way that I make music now. Um, so yeah, I definitely say it's played a massive part in obviously in where I'm at now. It did give me a leg up, to be honest, because I could tell like what would maybe like work in a club, like obviously just be able to read the crowd. Like obviously when I started playing my own production, I could tell like what elements were working for the crowd and what elements were not, and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it did give me a leg up in a lot of senses, I believe.
I see. And then your other big residency, very long standing residency too, was XOYO in London. How did
Yes.
that come about?
That just came about. That came about from asking that. So that was a midweek residency. That was actually a Monday night. And the club used to sell out every week on a Monday. It was more like student based. But that was where I got to play a bit more like fun, I can't remember what genre. It's more like bass tech housey stuff. It's more like fun, like bouncy stuff. That came around from just being invited once to play a guest hour slot, and then it then turned into they scrapped sort of like the format and the way they were doing it, and they just put me in there for 6 hours every single Monday night every week. So they had no more guest DJs, and they just put me in every single week. And yeah, that went on for like a good amount of years, and that was good fun.
I see. And when did you first start? I know your first release was in 2017, your like debut release, but when did you first start dabbling in production?
It would have been probably it's 2017. That's probably about 7 years ago now.
I see.
Um, but I mean, I took it up. Yeah, so 2017. That's 5 years ago. Yeah, so it would have been about 7 years ago. But I mean, even then, I was dabbling in it, and I mean, looking back on some of them first tracks now, I shouldn't have put them out, but it's a part of the progression of obviously being a producer. I mean, they're if I listen back to them now, I just laugh because they're like 100% like from sample packs, like just loops and just stuff, stuff I just threw together basically without really having a clue of what I was doing. But it's the progression of things. I mean, it's always the advice I give to people now because I do a lot of like tuition and stuff like that. Is like don't rush into releasing tracks. But yeah, it's part of it. So
I
yeah,
mean,
7 years,
sometimes
I'd
you
say
also
now.
just need to get one out and just break the seal, you know?
Yeah. Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
so
for sure.
or what, I mean, with that, are you kind of saying that the pitch control EP? Because I like the title track on pitch control. I feel like it has this cool acid thing that like isn't just an acid to say you put an acid in there, you know, but it's like it has just this
Yeah.
tonality to it. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
So yeah, I mean the pitch control EP. I mean, yeah, that though both of them tracks were sort of like from sample packs I found just threw together. I mean, pitch control is not as bad as I can't remember what other. I think it's the Thump or something on there, or I can't remember what the other track is off the top of my head. But yeah, I mean they were just thrown together and just like from sample packs. Like there was nothing really creative in there, if you understand it. Like it was all out of the box stuff that I just threw together.
I
So
see.
I mean, like from a creative standpoint of where I'm at now, my music is very different. I mean, looking back, obviously now I create 100% everything myself. Like I don't use anything out of the box, like out of sample pack boxes. I mean, I'll use like little one shot samples and stuff like that, but I'll yeah, everything's sort of my own now.
I
And
see.
I try to when I teach, try to encourage people to get into that habit as soon as possible because I wish I'd started doing it a lot sooner.
What do you feel like was the first track you released or the first release where I mean, not like, you know, obviously you're always getting better, but where you were like, you know, you really had done a lot of this stuff yourself and stuff like that.
That would be Safari.
Okay.
So that was the first track where I was fed up of sampling, and that's a track I made with my friend called Intrusive, and I was like, you know what, I'm fed up of trying to get samples cleared, sending stuff to labels. Like, oh, I've already heard this like vocal from a vocal pack. So that was the first one where I wrote the vocal, done it in my own voice, and then the whole beat was original. And yeah, that done really well. So that was my first like proper track that was like original that really hit. I mean, I think it ended up climbing to like number 5 in the Beatport chart at the time. which was unreal for my expectations. That was my first track that was like that sold really well and was like streamed a lot, and that had a lot of hype around it. Because I only gave it out to probably about 2 or 3 DJs, and it was getting played in so many places. And I'll never remember. I was in Amsterdam at ADE, a dance event, and I walked up into one of the green rooms, and there was just this girl that I'd never met in my life, just singing the words to it. And as I walked into the green room, and I was like, what are you singing? And she said the words. She's like, oh, it's this track that Will Taylor's been playing. She's like, I've heard it a few times now. And I was like, I didn't even say it was my track. I was like, oh, sick. But that was,
Just played it cool.
I've never been, it was just a cool moment. That was like the turning point where I realized, like, you know what, I'm onto something here with this new sort of mindset of what I'm doing with my music.
I see. And then what are some other milestone tracks since then? Like it could be like, a big label that got you more recognition, or even just for you personally, like, wow, that track wrote itself. That's the first time that happened. Like walk me through some of the big ones.
So I feel like the next big milestone after that was getting to release on Repopulate Mars, which is Lee Foss's label.
Yeah.
Those were 2 tracks as well. So you got the Underground and Manipulate. The Underground was another one I done all my own vocals on. I remember. So there's a story around this. Like, so I met Lee through Egg, and we hung out one night when he'd done his Repopulate Mars night there. Got chatting and stuff like that. And I gave him a USB stick, and he actually lost it. We had some demos on there. There was some demos on there, and I followed up with him. I dropped him an email like 2 weeks later. I was like, "Oh, did you listen to some tracks?" And he was like, "Oh, sorry, I'll be honest with you, I lost the USB stick." And I was like, "You know what? It's cool. Like, here's a track." Sent him again. They weren't quite right, and he was like, "Oh, look, keep sending me stuff." And the next day, I made Underground. I sent it to him, and he's like, "Oh, this is special." He's like, "Look, just put it on hold, and leave it with me." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And then the next day, I made Manipulate. Sent that straight to him, and he was like, "Wow, this is even cooler." He's like, "Look, just give me the weekend. Let me try them out, and then I'll talk to you." It didn't even make it through the weekend. I mean, that was on the Thursday. And then I think on the Saturday night, I was playing at Egg London, and during my set, I saw my phone flash up on the side with just an email from Lee, and I was like during a mix, and I was like, damn, I was like, I need to look at my phone, but I didn't. I waited till after my set. I checked my phone, and Lee was like, look, I don't even need like the rest of the weekend. Like I'm signing these now.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that must have been really distracting. Or I mean, you didn't know what kind of email it was going to be, right?
I know it was either going to be good or bad, but I thought, you know what, he's emailing me on a Saturday. I mean, it must be good news. So, I mean, yeah, I finished the rest of my set with a smile on my face, and then I checked my phone. And I was like, yeah, it's good news. So yeah, Lee signed into Repopulate Mars, and I believe at the time there was like a year wait on the release schedule, but he moved the whole release schedule and got the EP out within the next like 2 months, which sort of said a lot. Yeah, which sort of said a lot. And then me and him become very good friends, and we're still very good friends to this day. But I mean, it was that release from Repopulate Mars, which was sort of like my first like big tier like US label, which I feel like made a lot of people take me a bit more seriously, so to speak, and that the tracks were really good, and they were perceived really well by everyone. I think that was sort of the first stamp point where people were like, okay, this guy's like maybe he's about to become a serious artist, or he's got potential to be a serious artist.
I see. And then
it sort of like from that led on to Fisher was playing out Manipulate everywhere, absolutely rinsing it everywhere. And then I was like messaging Fish, like he was tagging me in videos, and I'd reply to him like, thanks so much for the support, thanks so much for the support. Never got a reply until for about 2-3 months after. And then I was just walking to a gig, and I got a message on Instagram saying, "Oi, see you," and I don't know if I could swear on here, so I won't say it. It was literally just saying that. He's like, "Oi, I've been playing all your music, like Lee Foss sent me, it's sick, send me some stuff for the label." And I was like, damn.
That's
so
amazing.
Yeah, he said he wanted, yeah, he was like, send me some stuff for catch and release. So it was obviously the Repopulate Mars EP, which sort of led to the EP, the two releases on Fisher's label, and then everything sort of escalated from there.
That's how it tends to go. There's kind of a label ladder that you climb with credibility, you know?
Yeah, exactly that.
And then so that kind of takes us to recently, just last month you dropped Party Diva. And that was after a long summer of gigging. I mean, maybe this was just on the back burner for a while, I don't know, but did you channel some of those experiences into that track?
I you know what, I probably did without really thinking about it. It was more the fact that I'd finally been able to because obviously during COVID and stuff like that, I had to go back to working a day job and like and getting back. Obviously, I've had bills to pay and stuff like that. So, I mean, when I started touring, and so in April, I think it was, that was when I then stopped that working during the days again, and I got to focus just back on focus on music and just get back into a music mindset, and then all my creativity that I was using for like my work, so I was doing like building work, and obviously that's quite creative.
I
My
see.
creativity came back towards music, and I just had this like flood over the next few months of just ideas and vocals and just so much stuff. And then yeah, I managed to piece together Party Diva, and it happened really quickly to happen. It happened in the day that I sort of pieced it all together. And then yeah, that was just sort of it was just a collective of getting back into the music mindset and like being able to like, okay, like now we've got my visa, I can tour, I can go at this sort of like full steam now. And I just had the freedom that I could relax and just do my own thing again.
I see. And so you said that during the pandemic, you had to kind of take up like a different line of work for a little while.
Yeah, so I mean, I've always sort of had like other jobs that I'd done, sort of. So I was always done building work from when I was young. I mean,
I see.
music's obviously a hard one to get to pay the bills from.
Absolutely.
So I mean, I've got a son as well. I've got an 11-year-old son, so obviously I had to support him and obviously make sure that he's provided for, whilst obviously paying my own bills, etc., etc. So yeah, so I always have sort of had like a back burner job whilst doing music at the same time. And then just yeah, so before COVID, I'd probably gone full time with music for like about a year.
I
So
see.
maybe like a year, and then COVID came, and I was like, damn, I've got to go back to work. But which is fine. I mean, I've never wanted to complain about work. It's not what I want to be doing, but you got to pay the bills, and you got to do what you got to do in this world. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
That
so
must have been discouraging though, after
it
all that
it
work to get to that point.
it was, but I mean, I've sort of discovered. I mean, there's moments where I crack a little bit, but I am like quite resilient in some senses. Like, I am only human, and I have moments where I'm like, damn, like stuff gets to me, but I tend to have like quite a positive mindset, and I'm like, it'll be okay, it'll be okay. Just keep things moving, keep things moving. And obviously it divided my time. At the time I did have free to do music, obviously getting back from working a job like doing like 10-hour days on a building site, and then coming home and then trying to sit on the computer and do music for a few hours, I was knackered. So I mean, it sort of did, there was a spell there where I didn't really make much music, and that was sort of I didn't really have many ideas for what I was creating, so to speak.
That's so interesting because I've heard so many producers say, and I understand why in your case because of where you were devoting your energy. I've heard so many
Yeah,
artists say that during the pandemic was when they just stocked up on music. They just stocked up on music and like just
yeah.
opened the doors for business when everything else opened back up.
Yeah, I know for sure. I mean, I've heard very like there's a mixed batch. I mean, so yeah, so some people it was like it works beneficial for them, and then others it sort of had an adverse effect. I mean, I'm very much a person that, I mean, if I like to go out and enjoy myself as well, like when I'm not working, like even if I finish a set and the night's still young, I'll carry on, like, and I'll hang around, like, and sort of pick up on the energy and like sort of feed off the crowd a little bit. And I 9 times out of 10 I get ideas for vocals while I'm in a club. And I mean, I'm very much a person that I can't sit and make a track blind. I have to go into it sort of with an idea of how it's going to sound, what the vocal hook is, or what the melody is, or the synth
Interesting.
line. I mean, like, I'd say every track that I've released probably for the past like 4 or 5 years, but actually probably for the last like 3 4 years, I've always had the track in my head before I've made it.
You don't hear that as often in dance music, a lot of the time more songwriter
Yeah,
stuff will have that, but in dance music, a lot of the
yeah.
time they're like, well, I started messing around with the drum loop and then one thing led to another.
Yeah, no, I mean, so I mean, the key parts of all my songs, that's what I'm talking about. I'll have the key parts of the vocal hook and like a rough melody. I mean, like Elevate, for example, on Catch and Release, like I had the whole synth pattern in my head, and that it sped up and then slowed back down and then sped back up and then dropped in. That's saying Elevate and then dropped in. I mean, the bass line sort of came after I made obviously the build. I sort of work a lot backwards sometimes in the way I make my tracks. Like sometimes, most of the time, I'll make the build and the breakdown first, and then worry about how it's going to drop in.
That's so
So yeah,
interesting. I'm not a producer myself, but obviously I talk to plenty of them, and I feel like it's really not that way a lot of the time.
yeah,
You're,
yeah. I mean, it's complicated, but it works.
I see. And there's so many tech house artists right now, like so many of them,
Mm,
especially because it's become more popular in the States and things like that. What do you
yeah.
what do you think it is that makes your sound signature just a little bit more memorable and different?
I mean, that's how, what you said there. Memorable is how I approach everything. That is sort of a key word in what I do, and it's like I want to be that, make that track that so you hear on a dance floor, you hear on the radio, and you're like, damn, like, do you remember that vocal hook or that synth line, or like I want to be the track that you walk away remembering from the whole night, because it's very easy at the moment that, like you said, there's so many producers and stuff like that, and I mean, it's so accessible now to anyone to make music. It's
Yeah.
probably more accessible. It's more accessible to DJ and make music than it's probably ever been. There's so many tutorials online that anyone can throw a track together, and really just there's a lot of tracks I feel that are out there which they're good tracks, but they get forgotten about. I mean, they've got like a 2 week lifespan of their release on Beatport and stuff like that. And I try to think now that I want to create music that's got a longevity, that you could discover a track of mine in 4 years time and it still works, and you're still like, damn, like this it stands a test of time, and it has a longer lifespan than 2 weeks that you're pushing it on Beatport, so to speak, or pushing it on Spotify. So
And
yeah, I try to.
Sorry, go on.
But yeah, so I try to base my stuff around that it's not going to be forgotten about, and it all stands out and it's all original. And I mean, my sort of ethos is that I want to make. There's obviously a lot of sampling as well that's been going on at the moment, like R&B, hip hop stuff. I mean, that's all fine, but it's not really me. I want to be the guy that, which, especially my vocals that I write, I want to be the guy that writes a vocal which is so damn good that everyone else wants to sample it and remix it for the next 10 years.
Right. Yeah. And what advice would you have for producers who maybe could like use more of that approach? Like, do you hum melodies into a recorder and stuff when you're out, things like that? Like,
yeah.
do you have any quick and dirty tips for just making things more memorable?
I mean, yeah, obviously technology is your best friend at the moment. Like, obviously we live in such an accessible world. Like, yeah, my voice notes on my phone has got melodies, vocal hooks. My notes on my phone have pages and pages and pages of lyrics, the stuff that doesn't make no sense. And that I have to obviously try and piece together like certain parts, but just like rhyming lines or words that I see. Like if I'm reading a book or a newspaper or something like that, I'll pick out words which sound cool and then see if I can put them into a track. Or yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, always write stuff down, or always like voice record it into your phone, because yeah, you're never going to remember it just unless you've got an extremely good memory. I mean, the amount of stuff that runs through my brain, I would never remember it unless I wrote everything down.
And then there's also kind of a little thing you probably train yourself to, like, when something pops into your head, you're immediately like, oh, I have to write this down. So you end up coming up with more ideas because there's like this positive feedback loop.
And I mean, literally 2 days ago, I was in the shower, I was mid shower, and I had this vocal line pop into my head. I ran out the shower, put it into my phone, and then got back into the shower. I just like dripped water all over the house. I was like, yeah, it's because I have to, because otherwise my brain works so quickly that I'll forget it. But yeah, always write stuff down.
What direction is your project going to take in the future?
I mean, it's an interesting one that I've been thinking a lot about, because I mean, I feel like the tech house scene and tech house music, it's constantly evolving. I mean, like tech house was big in the UK 6-7 years ago, and there's sort of elements of that sound now which are now big in the US, but there's also like a US twist on it. And I mean, I feel like I've done a lot of the big club tracks already. I've sort of like covered that side of it, but I'm now like trying to like move like towards like the middle ground between it could work in a club and you could listen to it at home, you could listen to it in your car, and I feel like now with Party Diva, that sort of falls in the pocket like very, very nicely of sort of easy listening at home, but then it also works really well in the club. So I mean, I feel like that's sort of the sound I'm going to like now start to develop, and I also want to make more song-based stuff. So I mean, I want to get in like, I mean, a lot of my vocals so far have been spoken word and spoken word rhyming and stuff like that. But I'm starting now to work with like some female vocalists. I'm doing some like cool top line stuff.
Nice.
Just to make some songs, because I love songs, and I love like music that tells a story. So I mean, it's always something that I've wanted to touch into. And yeah, so that's what I'm going to be working on now, and then see if I can sort of implement that into what I'm doing, and just see how it goes down really. But yeah, that's the plan for moving forward.
What kind of vocals are we talking about? Are we talking about like house diva vocals? Are we talking about like radio vocals?
I mean, a sort of a cross between like radio vocals, but also work in the club. So I mean, like obviously some like John Summit stuff, like Escape, the Escape remix and stuff like that, which falls in a nice pocket between club play and radio play. That's not too that's not too mainstreamy. I mean, I want to try and keep it like credible and underground as well at the same
Yeah.
time. But I say it's a hard balance to find. But once I find it, oh no, there's been a lot. There's been a lot of projects that I'm working on which sort of go too far mainstream. I'm like, right, that one's not quite right. Let's just rein it back in a little bit. But yeah, it's a very tedious process. But I feel like I'm getting very, very close to getting where I want to be with it.
I see. Okay. And house music is going through a kind of interesting period right now where there's been a lot of, obviously house music never went anywhere, especially overseas. You guys have historically been a lot more interested in house music than we have, even though it originated here. But there's been a lot of kind of commercial interest in it, and like increasingly so for years now. Like first it was Fisher having a Billboard #1. Now it's Drake and Beyonce dabbling in it. What do you feel?
Yeah.
How do you feel about this? Are you for this? Are you against it? Somewhere in the middle?
I mean, obviously, I come from open format background. I still listen to all types of music. I'm very much for it. I mean, people have to have a gateway into this scene some way or another, and I feel that Beyonce, Drake, and other people that are going to start doing house music now, it's a good thing. I mean, if anyone tells you it's a bad thing, then I mean, house music's all about love and obviously embracing everyone of all different scenes, backgrounds, religions, like and races and stuff like that. So I mean, it just brings people together. So to turn around and say, oh, you like a Drake or a Drake house song, or whatever, it's still house music, and it's still going to be a gateway into these people discovering other forms of house music. So say they start listening to Drake house or Beyonce house, they then become curious of then looking into more like deeper house or like tech house and I suppose the market, especially at the moment in the US and the UK and everywhere at the moment for house is so big that there's so much accessible music that people can find, and it could be their gateway into it. I mean, it's not for everyone, sort of like the raves and etc., but you still will pick up a small portion that are like, damn, like this was my gateway into house music. The same way as like my gateway into house music was like Jamie Jones and Lee Frost with Hot Natured. It wasn't obviously mainstream at the time, but I mean, like Benediction, for example, that did go mainstream. That entered like the UK top 40 charts. So you could say that track was slightly mainstream. And it's the same with Camel Fat, Duncola. That was a very big mainstream track, especially in the UK, which introduced a lot of people to house music. And now there's a lot of them that are now like ravers and go out raving all the time because they got introduced by this track that was mainstream house.
That is a good point. It can be a point of entry for people.
Yeah,
sure. And I've read previous articles where you shouted out some of like the artists you've been playing a lot and stuff like that. But if I'm not mistaken, it's been like a year since you've done one of those, and a year is a long time in dance music. Who are some of the up and coming artists? Let's focus on up and coming artists that you've been playing a lot or you feel like deserve more of the spotlight.
Okay, so Max Styler is a good one.
Okay.
Lucati is another good artist. And I mean, sorry, off the top of my head, I can't really remember who's in my playlist. But I mean, it's a hard one for me at the moment because my sound's very much like changed in what I'm playing, and I'm trying to play more original music, and it's getting harder and harder to find music. I find like a rare track every now and again, but for the moment, those are my two that I will shout out to watch out for. That I'm playing their tracks religiously in my sets.
Okay, and obviously you have a more diverse musical background than just house music. If you weren't playing house music or making house music, what music do you think you would be working in?
Drum and bass.
Yeah.
Definitely drum and bass. Like drum and bass is my guilty pleasure. I mean, I still listen to it every day in the car. It's just so happy. you can't not smile when you listen to drum and bass. I mean, there's obviously there's different types of drum and bass, but like liquid, like happy drum and bass, you can't help but smile or even like have a little dance around to it. Yeah, so it'd be drum and bass.
Very true. And it's also, with a lot of the younger generation, especially in the US, it's also gaining a lot of popularity right now too.
I've noticed that. I mean, I dropped by one of the stages at EDC that was playing drum and bass, and I was like, damn, I never knew it was like this popular in the US. And yeah, since then I've noticed a few more artists that are popping up and stuff like that. And there's a few like artists that are big from the UK that are now coming out to play over there. And I'm like, damn, like drum and bass is picking up some pace over there.
This is recent. This is like this year,
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Yeah, I've noticed it, and I mean, I'm all
Do
for
you
it.
do you think maybe you would ever consider a drum and bass side project?
Oh, I don't know. I did start messing around like making some drum and bass a while ago, but I mean, I think my projects at the moment, I'm in such a sweet spot with what I'm doing. I feel like it'd be silly to take my foot off the gas and then start focusing on something else. Maybe in a few years, once I'm where I want to be, and
Right.
I can relax a little bit more. Then I can maybe venture into doing something for. I can maybe venture into doing something, even if it's just for myself, and I don't. No one knows that I'm doing it. Yeah, just for a bit of enjoyment. There's a possibility down the line that it could happen.
I see.
Never say never.
Right, right. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. And I want to thank everybody viewing this. And you have
Oh,
a
no,
great rest of
amazing.
your day, all right? Looking forward to seeing you in US again.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you having me on, and I hope it gives you guys a bit of an insight into my life and how I've got to where I am and what I'm doing what I'm doing now.
Absolutely. Well, have a great rest of your night, all right?
Well, take care, mate. Bye bye. Speak soon.